Alright, well, I guess I'll figure it out when I do this for the first time. I guess really we're just going off for the first time. So we got some, let me reload some of these pages. I guess we got some updated news going on. I guess this really is just like the beginning. So I guess, welcome. Hopefully I know everyone that's watching, but if anybody does end up seeing this that I'm not personally, like, I don't know you, welcome. I guess one of the biggest things I want to try and like do with this, I guess, channel, this project that I'm doing, is sort of just like, I guess, talking about some stuff and sort of trying to get a better narrative going on. One of the bigger issues that I see is that people just don't know stuff because nobody talks about anything. I think one of the biggest things that we have a problem with in, I guess, normie culture is that certain things just aren't getting talked about. And so when you try and talk to anyone who isn't informed, they either think you're crazy or they have no opinion, no comment, and so they're not really contributing to, I guess, a solution if there is a problem, or maybe they're contributing to a problem and not even realizing it. And so, I mean, this is a project I've been kind of wanting to get around to doing eventually. I guess now, better. I mean, there's no time like the now, and I think it's pretty fascinating to get into today in the year of our Lord 2023, where we're having more bank failures, and at the same time more bank bailouts like we saw in 2008. And I was a lot younger in 2008. I was 10 years old at the time, so I really don't remember too much. I've tried to read up and watch up on some stuff from the time, but I was just a child, so a lot of it is me having to like look up on a lot of the problems from 2008 and what happened. But you know, I'm not like an expert in anything really. I find myself to be fairly, like, you know, not the smartest person in the room most times. So a lot of this is going to be like unscripted. I mean, so far for this first episode, it's mostly just going to be like a welcome episode, more laying down like what I'm trying to do. Eventually I'll try and have some friends or some other voices on, people that I know. Try and have more of a conversation rather than just me ranting. I mean, I don't know what this is really going to turn into. Really, I just did this. It's something I've been wanting to do. I guess, talk about stuff, try and break it down to like layman's terms, because that's how I understand stuff and that's how I talk about stuff. It's just like putting it into its simplest terms. So, and that's, I guess, I mean, it can be difficult having to talk about some of these like bigger topics, and again, like probably the biggest thing going on in March 13th of 2023 is the fact that we're having these bank collapses. Not so much the housing market, because that's what I understand that it was in 2008, is that it was a big old housing bubble, and then it popped, and then, you know, everything just started falling over with, I guess, banks just not being able to meet ends with a bunch of, I guess, financial fucking things. Again, I'm not an expert. I don't know all the terminology. I just know that banks were playing fast and loose with mortgages, lending out money, and then when the bill came due, the banks didn't get their money, and then so when it came time for the banks to have to pay bills, they didn't get the money from the mortgages that they had lent out, or something along those lines. And so when I'm doing this, I'm gonna try to be as like fact oriented. I mean, I'll try and like present what is as it is, and then put in my 2 cents, I guess, and try and like break things down so that they're simple, so that one way I can talk to some of my coworkers or some of my friends who may not be as, read up on some of this stuff. And I guess if anybody's watching this and they feel like, hey, that's a good way to put, what's going on. Because my uncle asked me about, hey, what's going on with, X, Y, and Z. And I have no clue, but, he thinks I do. I'm sure everyone has, relatives that ask them questions about what's going on, assuming that they would know. But, if you're just not caught up, then why would you? And so a part of that is just trying to give people resources, or not resources, but like I guess a different opinion. Hey, that's one way to see it. That's one way to break it down. Again, I'm just gonna be giving my opinion on most things, on like what is real. And if there's something that I don't know, I'll just flat out say like I don't know. I have no problem saying, feigning ignorance of a topic. If I don't know something, there's no way for me to know. I mean, I can do research, but if I'm not the expert, why would I try and lay some authority? And so I have on my second monitors, where I'm probably doing the majority of the work. I'll try to have all this stuff done on both YouTube and Rumble. Eventually, I'll try and get to live streaming. But for the time being, I'll just be recording all this stuff. And then on the bookmark, I don't know if you can really make it out, but I got a bunch of different news websites that are pretty common. Nothing too crazy on the edge. Like the craziest ones on the edge that are probably not as well known is the Daily Wire and Timcast.com. Those ones are, maybe the Daily Wire, they're pretty popular on Facebook in like the middle 2010s. But these other ones are pretty like well known, like the Associated Press, the BBC, the New York Times, the LA Times, Daily Mail, the Independent, Bloomberg, Washington Post, so on and so forth. I'll try and have a wide array, so it's not just like I'm pulling a bunch of things from just one source. So especially it's if you see a bunch of different sources pulling out, the same thing, there might be, it can either be a congregated effort to push one certain narrative or a specific set of facts, painted in a specific light, or the fact that we got a couple of banks that just collapsed and failed because they're not able to, I guess they don't have the money on hand to give to the people that put the money in the bank to begin with. Like that's, I can see, you can put a spin on anything, but when it comes to something like this, like the bank insolvency, I'm gonna go ahead and assume that it happened. I'm not gonna go down to California and see if Silicon Valley Bank is still open or not and what the status is. But the argument on whether or not these banks should have been bailed out, again, is reminiscent of 2008, where everyone lost, like a lot of people lost their homes, but the bankers were bailed out. All the banks got their money back, and then the executives of those banks ended up giving themselves bonuses. Why wouldn't you? When the government gives you all your money back, why wouldn't you give yourself a bonus for such a hard day's work? I personally don't think the banks should be bailed out, which comes with it the counter argument of the unfairness to the people who do bank there, that they won't be seeing their money, even if they thought it was a safe bet to put the money in the bank. And again, there's arguments to everything. I'm only going to try and present mines. I'll try and present counter arguments. And when I have some of my friends come on, I'm sure they'll push back on stuff I say. I don't agree with a lot of my friends, but one thing I do value is honesty. And so if someone can at least tell me from their point of view what they're thinking, then we can have a conversation, and that's all the better, whether or not we agree. Because at the heart of conversations like that is determining what someone's value set is. And on certain things, on certain topics, there is a justifiable right or wrong. And then on other topics, there is no right or wrong. There's just trade-offs and what someone is willing to trade off. What it basically, that person's value. Personally, I don't think we should be bailing out banks. I think if you play with other people's money, one, I think that's wrong. I'm pretty sure that's illegal. I'm not an expert, but I know that a lot of the crypto failures that have occurred in the recent year, 2 years, like FTX that just collapsed, earlier this year, I think late last year, that whole saga was a combination of, I guess, fraud of the people who put their money in FTX, and then the exchange going and taking the people's money and doing things they weren't supposed to be doing with it. Essentially, banks do the same thing where you'll deposit your money into a bank, then they'll go out and lend that money out to someone else. And it's a little bit more complicated than that, just because banks can lend out more than they have. But when you're playing by the rules that you set up for yourself so that you have an advantage, right? These bankers, they are buddy with the people that make the rules. This is the heart of the money system of this country and essentially the world, right? Specifically, Silicon Valley Bank is the bank of all the tech companies and all the tech startups. Right? They'll go on. All these companies will go on years without making money, and then eventually they'll make a profit. Damn, I really just been ranting, huh? I guess that's what I plan on doing. A little bit of a rant, a little bit kind of just getting these ideas out. I'm not particularly afraid of speaking my mind on some of these things. I will try and censor, I guess, myself on some of the topics I'll say, just because they're not all suited for every audience. Some conversations I'll have between, behind closed doors, and some I don't mind speaking out, just because, again, that's kind of the point of what I'm trying to do here. I don't think anything I'm saying is original. I think it's just a matter of, I guess, encouraging both myself and others to not be afraid to speak their mind, because that's a lot of the things that we see today, is that people are afraid to speak to such a degree where we have let things happen with what we don't agree with. I'm sure I'll come up with an example. I don't have anything right now at this moment. But I don't think a majority of this country, say, agrees with, I say, a banker bailout. I'm sure a good population does, but not. I don't think enough people warrant it, and I don't think enough people support the idea to have done this. So I guess let's really just get into it. Get the hell out of here. New York Times are really gonna make an account with you guys. All right, I'll have to do this. I'll do that later, I guess. Just go with the AP. I've always thought the AP as kind of like a fairly neutral news site. They do pretty well when it comes to world news. But anyways, I think the decision for these banks, I think, is problematic, and I think it shows a lot of the the elite mindset. And what I mean by that is that the I think the idea that banks are too big to fail is, I think it's a wrong idea. I think the idea of creative destruction, which is what I guess one of the elements of what capitalism is, the putting money in projects that are supposed to create wealth and productivity, and just forcing money into places that are supposed to go bust, I think promotes bad behavior. And that's exactly what we've seen here, is a bunch of poor choices made in putting up not profitable companies has left the Silicon Valley Bank in particular with a bunch of money lent out and not enough money on hand to meet their obligations. So let's just get into, I guess we'll read this article for a little bit and see if, who is this? Fatima Hussein, if she has anything noteworthy. Let's see, 2016, Vice President warned against efforts to unravel banking regulations that the Democrats have fought hard to implement following the nation's crisis. Yes, that's another thing to mention, that, again, because I was also 10 years old when the 2008 financial collapse happened. A lot of people don't it's not as obvious to, I guess, a lot of the younger generations like me, that the current sitting president, President Biden, was the vice president to President Barack Obama in 2012 and 2016. I'm sorry, 2012 and 2008. And it was Barack Obama and Joe Biden that had bailed out the banks. And it's, from 2008 to 2023, it's not even that long. We're having another bank crisis under, essentially the same administration, because a lot of the people that worked in the Obama administration have come back to work under the Biden administration. And so, again, one of the things I'll do, I guess, towards the end, when I start to wrap things up, is, I guess, I want to try and get a Word document and try and put some of these things on, not necessarily a timeline, but like hey, let's not forget what happened, what has happened, because I think way too often people, we're all guilty of just forgetting stuff. I know we're talking about the banking crisis that's going on right now, but it was, about a month ago that we had this massive train derailment in Ohio, and a lot of those people, I'm sure, haven't gotten any help, or little help, if any. We don't see in the news anymore what the situation's like. I'm sure those people still need help. I'm sure a lot of those people are still sick. And when it was fresh, when it was salient, when it was new, it was on the news. There was coverage about how certain outlets weren't covering it, and then then everyone was talking about it. But at that point, some of the coverage was pointing fingers of people not saying stuff, some people saying stuff. At one point, it became a political thing where it was divided on Trump going to Ohio, and then none of the current administration going. And your thoughts or opinions on either this administration or the previous administration, it doesn't change the fact that people were, I guess, victim of a chemical burn-off, whether or not that was the right move or not. We'll not know what the other option was. We'll only know what the consequences are of a chemical burn-off. Had they not burned off those chemicals, who knows what have happened. We can make, I guess, a good hypothesis of, the chemicals would have gone to the water, the chemicals would have gone to the soil, X, Y, and Z would have happened. And to what degree, we can make a guess, but only, to a certain degree of confidence. But now that's it's no longer out of the news. People are not looking at Ohio and that train derailment. Only here and there is there's been some discussion of the train companies trying to have more regulations. But again, it's not like the big news topic. As I go through the New York Times and some of these other news outlets, right? The banking crisis is going to be one. Right now, as of yesterday or tonight, I think this oil project, I think in Alaska, is making wind in the news, and I think we as a country have a problem that there's not enough people talking. I think too many people are listening, and not. I think too many people are passively listening. I should specify, because anyone that does talk there's nothing original, right? And the unoriginality, I think, only promotes, I guess, like a high-minded effect that if we're all saying the same thing, then it must be true, when that may not necessarily be the case. Because why is it that there's only one or two opinions on any given subject, when there on any given subject there should be nuance, there should be a conversation. Things shouldn't be done on a whim, right? It had shocked me that I forget which bank, I'd have to relook at one of these, which bank specifically had a guarantee that they're getting their money back from the government. And I thought it was pretty freaking fast that they made that decision. I don't know how fast it was that in 2008, how long it took for the banks to get their money back, to be bailed out. But at least here, it was, within the weekend. There was murmurs last week, March, 7, 8, 9, something was going on. I think by March 10, everything had been shut down. 3 banks had been shut down, or 2 banks. It was, I believe, Signature Bank, but this being the bigger one, Silicon Valley. And by Sunday night, I think, was when the announcement had come out that there's going to be a guarantee of the money, that everyone's going to have their money back. And it's again, I personally think that, you put your money into a bank like Silicon Valley Bank. Um, they obviously made some wrong moves with the companies they invested in, who they let be a depositor into the bank. And so now what we have here is, I can't wait for these news outlets to then pivot from, I guess, a timeline of what's going on to, not to both sides attacking one another, because it's bound to happen like this week or something. Like, we're gonna start seeing articles like, Republicans hate people and Democrats want to destroy the country or something like that. It's gonna happen. What it's gonna do essentially is take the narrative away from whether or not it was right or wrong to for money just being thrown about in such frivolous ways, and it's gonna turn to just finger pointing, and then a couple weeks from that, like, this is gonna be out of the spotlight, and it's gonna be something else. And so, I'll put this on like a pinned document, and we'll come back to this. We'll see how this develops. I guess that'll be something I bring up in the next, episode. I haven't really figured out what the exact format of this is going to be. I do know that I want to, wrap up things by putting out a timeline, so that way, we have some continuity in the things that are going on. Being able to check up on some stuff, even if no one else is, because there's bound to be like one or two places that are, following up. If no one else will, then, we will. Eventually, I'll try and develop what this is going to look like. All the segments and stuff, what, when, how long, whatnot. I really don't plan on having a script or anything. Kind of maybe just reading over a couple things. I guess maybe having things a little bit more organized. So I have, a little bit of a plan of, what's going to be talked about, for how long, how many topics I want to get into, because I guess today we kind of just did one, a little bit of an overview. But I guess we'll start to, wind things down. So let me pull up this document real quick. Because one of the big things, again, of, the flavor of the week is this this banking crisis. And I think this oil thing is going to be coming up pretty soon. So let's go ahead and we'll make this our what do we call it? I guess news recap. I guess I'll fix the formatting so it looks a little bit prettier. But I guess starting on 13 March 23. Let's get some bullet points. Banking crisis happened over the weekend. I believe it was Signature Bank was the small one. We had Silicon Valley Bank. I guess bank is capitalized, huh? These. I know I didn't really talk about it too much, but the Silvergate exchange network also shut down. Pretty sure Silvergate's spelled that way. We'll look it up right now, just so I can get this correct. And from my understanding, what the Silvergate exchange network was. Silvergate exchange network was basically the bank for one of the banks for why is Silvergate closing? From my understanding, it was a bank for one of the banks for the crypto exchanges, which allowed, I guess, big crypto players to move money around outside of typical market hours. Don't tell me I'm gonna have to be a freaking member with you too. Okay, so I guess it seems like we got some prep to do for this stuff. CoinDesk, here we go. Silvergate. This report came out March 3rd, updated March 6th. Effective immediately, Silvergate Bank has made a risk-based decision to discontinue the Silvergate Exchange network. All other deposit-related services will remain operational. There's no information to share. So the Silvergate Exchange network was a 24/7 instant settlement service where bank clients could conduct transaction between each other at any time. The bank counted a number of major crypto firms as its clients for the service, including Binance.us, Kraken, Gemini, Ares X. Prior to its acquisition, Silvergate had a tough week because it closed. I guess kind of make things short. So this was one of the bigger banks that had a exchange network. So I guess you can kind of think of like if your Wells Fargo or Bank of America bank had their own like little Robinhood app on the side, which would allow you to do all the stuff you would normally do when it comes to buying, selling stocks and crypto. Silvergate, however, played for the big boys, the bigger exchanges, and so with them closing out the exchange network, that stopped some of the big players from moving some stuff around. So a halt in what was typical market conditions, I guess, sort of added volatility to, and I guess push a lot of people to sell with the unknown market conditions of where things would be going. And then that kind of led into the Silvergate signature. And what was the other bank that had collapsed? Bank collapse. Right, we had Silicon Valley Bank. We have what were the other ones? It's gotta be. I know there was more. We had Signature. Right. So yeah, Signature Bank, the third biggest bank. I thought there was one more. I could be wrong. Again, I guess this is just, hey, I need to do some like, pre-show stuff. But yeah, Signature Bank and Silicon Valley Bank. Again, it seems problematic that these big banks that are buddy with the regulators, they got stuff wrong. They were doing stuff they weren't supposed to be doing, but they're not going to be punished. I don't think anyone's going to jail. Um, this is definitely gonna have a ripple effect. So just because the second and third largest bank collapse in American history is definitely gonna push some other companies to the edge. Some people are gonna lose some money, and only a couple of key figures are getting their money back. So we'll go with, in terms of, I guess it's a bullet point, because at least from how I was watching this unfold, the Silvergate Exchange Network, while it was essentially just for crypto, mostly the stoppage of it, I guess, pushed Signature Bank over the edge. And again, with these three being like, the common thread between all three of these super tech-oriented firms, banks that are, all these tech companies, all these tech projects. What else is going on? The Willow Oil Project. I guess we'll look more into that. I guess let's look into it right now. We're just wrapping things up anyways. Right. So I won't get into too much depth on this oil project. I'll kind of let things play out. I definitely don't want to jump the gun on too many things. I guess, being that this is a pretty new story coming out, we have, I guess, all of Alaska right here. It's a pretty big state. And in this northern portion, I don't think people realize just how big Alaska is. This is probably California sideways, just this section. But anyways, basically just trying to put the interests of cheaper gas, some economic relief, producing stuff, making stuff, which is essentially what wealth and what money basically is. It's a representation of what it can get you. And so I think, that's definitely the argument that's going to be made, is whether or not we want to put the production of oil in Alaska, being that Alaska is it's got a bunch of resources or whatnot. And so I think it's a good idea to actually use Alaska for the resources that it has. The counter argument is that it's bad for the environment. That's essentially what it is. And now it's going to be one of these big political things. So we'll let this unravel. In Alaska, produce oil versus climate concerns. Right, so however you feel one way or the other, I think we should actually use Alaska and dig up all the shit that's under there, because there's a lot of minerals in Alaska that we're just not utilizing. Ooh, that's a bad color. Let's go with that. Alright, cool. Again, I guess that's all we'll do for today. We're already going on for 40 or so minutes. So, hopefully things continue. Hopefully I can continue things from here. If you watch the whole thing, cool. Thanks. I guess it's really mostly just for me to, I guess, have this conversation with myself, have this conversation with friends, try to flesh out some of these ideas for myself, just so I can actually put it into words, and easy words, not these big complex words that I'll sometimes use from time to time. Definitely try and break some of the stuff down, so that way it's like it doesn't have to be these big old freaking essays. Stuff that we can try and condense so we can actually have like a conversation. So if we do want it to get, into depth, we can, But I guess that's it. We'll see when the next, I guess, episode is. We'll see what, how often I do this. I'm really not too sure. This was kind of just like a rough draft. We'll see how this goes. I'll put this up, if you're watching this. Hopefully I can get around to doing this on a somewhat regular basis. I don't know if I'm going to do this, a couple times a week or just once a week. In which case, the longer I wait, I guess the more notes I'll probably have to have beforehand. If I have to do this daily, then I don't know, maybe I won't make it as long. But anyways, we'll definitely get into some other stuff. It won't always be what always is going on today. We'll get into some other stuff, more about like, some of the things I believe in, some of the things that I think are common goods and values that aren't being spoken about enough. I don't think I'm too crazy in, any one direction. Maybe, I don't know. We'll definitely find out. I don't think some of the ideas I have are that are out there. I think I when I speak, it definitely is some of the ideas that like my wife has, some of my friends have, or they'll agree even if they don't know. So we'll see how things play out. What this turns into. But yeah. I guess we'll close it off there, and I guess we'll see till next time.